If you are looking to improve your chances of actually getting into a New South Wales Selective High School, this video is for you. My name is John, and I'm the founder of Things Academy with over 10 years of teaching experience. I attended both Penrith High School and eventually transferred into Girraween High School, and have helped hundreds of students reach their educational goals. The biggest mistakes that I see students make is that they do not know specific requirements in terms of what is actually being assessed. If you do not know what the test structure is like, it is hard to prepare accordingly. For instance, there are 4 distinct sections within the reading exam, which typically always appear, whether it's from the sample test or one of the past papers from the previous years. It always starts with the standard reading comprehension text, whether it's a longer text or a comparison between 2 texts on a similar or the same theme. It is then followed by a poem, which is typically abstract in nature. The next section is on closed passages or the matching heading section. Depending on the year, either one of the 2 has and can be given. Personally, I believe the closed passage section is much more difficult. However, it does depend on the student's strengths and weaknesses. It is then always finished off and rounded out by the extract section, which has 10 questions in total. If I had to work backwards based on this advice, I know that since extracts has the highest number of questions assigned to it, I do not want to just guess any questions in this section in particular. Whereas if the poetry section is quite confusing in nature and the student is spending too long in this section, it might be worth leaving that section to the very end of the test. And there's a big reason for this. The reason why is because even if you got 4 questions wrong in the extract section, it's equivalent to get every single question in the poetry section correct, because the poetry section only has 6 questions. It's 6 questions versus 10 questions. So that means spending more time on the extracts is in your best faith, is in your best interest. This is the same approach students can also do for maths, thinking skills, and writing, where they can work backwards from the typical test structure and go from there. Another component of knowing how it is assessed is through the test weightings. Before 2025, there was a much higher weighting allocated to thinking skills, making it worth 35% compared to writing, which was only worth 15%. This meant that we would encourage, and it was very typical for a lot of the students that were more switched on to prepare more and spending more time on thinking skills. It is worth twice as much more than writing. Although from 2025 onwards, they have now made every test worth only 25%. So it's even across the board from reading, maths, thinking skills, and now writing. This means students who have been spending less time in the last few months preparing for writing based on previous and the older information will now have to adjust the last few months leading up to May this year. In addition, we also know that the writing section is confirmed to be online, which means that if students are not able to type fast enough, the quantity of what they produce will also be impacted. There will be a lot of distinct nuances from the writing alone, but I believe parents and students really need to know the requirements, the changes that have occurred, and what is actually going to be assessed in 2025 so they can improve their chances of actually making it in to a selective high school. Next, in order to improve your chances, I've touched on this previously in other videos, but you should honestly work backwards based on how much time is left to the exam and to understand your strengths and weaknesses. If you have 12 months left to the exam, so let's say that you're starting year 5 in 2025, you can look at studying by yourself and potentially looking at different types of tutors to see what is the best fit for you. Whether it's group tutoring to get a higher volume amount of homework, or one-on-one tutoring to get specific assistance in certain topic areas. 12 months or more allows you to essentially focus and experiment through the entire breadth of topics to know what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. So then in the final few months leading to the exam, then you can focus on those areas. If it's just 3 or 4 months left to go, let's say that you're doing the test this year in May, then, and you're only starting your preparation then, essentially what will happen is that you will have to rely on last minute tutoring, but sometimes it's really difficult for the tutor to be able to go through the entire spectrum of topics that are required. Generally, what I would recommend in this instance is to only focus on your weaker areas, so that's a better use of your time. This is because even with the classes with us, for instance, let's say that we're helping someone with writing, it's very difficult for us to cover all of them in just 3 or 4 months. I'm very transparent. I'm pretty upfront with a lot of parents in regard to this as well. Parents may insist that the child is a fast learner, but with just a large volume of information that needs to be processed and understood, it can be quite challenging based on the amount of time that is left to the exam. So with just a few months left, like in February, March, and April, perhaps more intense exams once a week will be more beneficial as opposed to learning every single concept. Your preparation has to adjust based on how much time you have to an exam. There are many places that have exams like the STTC or the ASAT exam, which can give some benchmarks and additional insights. On that note, we'll also be running the Selective 2025 Horizon program, which is a completely free 10-week program where students will complete all 4 exams of the selective test each week throughout this period. We will start this from the 7th of February to the 13th of April, 2025, being the 10th and final day of the program. Again, this is completely free for students that are in year 6 that are serious about preparing for the exam in May. So please only sign up if you are ready for it, or if you want to see whether you're ready for it. Signups will close at the end of the month or until we get too many students. When it comes to studying and preparation though, consistency is very important as it's the building blocks to success. Ideally, last minute cramming and revision is not done, because if you only have 3 months left, it is quite difficult to get enough exposure to the question types. And that is the reason why STTC is so popular in particular when it gets closer to the actual exam day. My last piece of advice is something I wish more parents knew about and actually followed. That is to be smart with their school choices. If a student is not doing well in exams like the ASAT or the Selective Horizon 2025 program with us, or they complete this and their scores are just really low leading up to the test in May, you have to be more conservative with your choices. Don't just choose the best schools like Baulkham Hills, James Roos, or North Sydney Boys. In 2025, we can still put down 3 choices, but how do we make this really count? Well, first of all, it's important to put down 3 choices and not less than that unless you're extremely certain and firm about your decision. Even if you are at this stage unsure about a school, whether it's lower ranked or further away, put it down, and if you're successful, you can make a firmer decision from there. A rule of thumb that I follow is that a school should be quite ambitious, where from the best and ideal state of your child, they can ultimately make it in, but it's not surprising if they did not. That should be your first preference. Your second school choice or your second preference needs to be a school that realistically, you have a higher chance of making it in based on your recent results, whether it's your ASAT or the Selective Horizon program, that it indicates that you have a decent chance of making it in. However, you still need to be quite happy and satisfied about this. The last option is the backup option, where if all else fails from your top 2 preferences, it is the option that you're going to have to lean towards. This backup option is quite important because even though your non-selective option is pretty bad, your lower ranks partially selected high school or your backup option or your third preference needs to be better than that, so that then it's still an improvement. For instance, in year 6, it could be quite smart for my mum to put down Gureen as the first preference, Penrith as the second preference, perhaps Blacktown and Boyce. This is good because Gureen is higher than my skill level at that time, but would be quite ambitious and potentially possible if everything aligned. Penrith is still aspirational, still quite challenging to make it in, but more realistic based on my recent school results. And Blacktown is a decent backup, but I would definitely not be very excited about that. Parents who do not follow this or who are not very realistic about their school choices tend to have great remorse after the results that come out, and they start preparing for the following year's exam to transfer into a selective high school, which is even more competitive and complex compared to the Year 6 exam. If you're not doing the STDC or the ASAT or wanted even more insights, remember to check out the Selective Horizon program that I talked about before. It's completely free. I've covered quite a few different areas on how you can improve your student success and the chances of actually making it in. I will say they're all quite important to take into consideration as opposed to prioritizing just one over another, what I've already discussed. I could have talked about the habits, the study approaches, tips and tricks on the day, which can also increase your chances of making it into selective high school. But ultimately, understanding the requirements, working backwards based on your weaknesses and the time frame that's available, and being smart with the school choices is a fantastic starting point, especially for students that only have a couple months to go. In addition, if you had any other ideas, feel free to include it in the comments below. Otherwise, make sure to like this video if you haven't already, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.